everyone. I can see people already joining the session. It's brilliant to see so many people joining at the moment. Well, as we wait for everyone to be able to join, if you want to tell me a little bit about yourselves in the chat, through the function that you have there, just tell me where you're from or where you're at the moment, what maybe made you joining the session today. And in the meantime, maybe I will introduce myself a little bit. But if you tell me where you're from or where you're at the moment, or your interests in this session, or what you would like to gain from this session, that would be absolutely delightful. Oh, I can see someone from Venezuela already. Oh, that's brilliant. Is it not great to have Zoom, that we can, connect with people from far away, so from Venezuela. Welcome to the session. Okay, we can have Monica as well. Hello, Cristina from Barcelona, now living in Greece. Oh, that's great. I can see already comments from people joining us. So my name is Nazaret Perez, and I'm from Spain, from a city called Granada in the south of Spain. And I joined Cardiff University in 2015, so I've been working there for a few years now. Before that, I was working in Northern Ireland, in Ulster University. So I've been teaching Spanish now for, sort of like 8 years or so. And what made me actually joining this show? Well, I read about the language show, a really interesting event for linguists, and I thought, well, this year, because it's obviously an opportunity to be here online, connecting with people from all over the world, I thought it could be a good experience for me, and I hope you can have a really good experience yourselves as well with this talk. Oh my goodness, we have someone from Northern Ireland. That's great. So I don't know if you can maybe tell, maybe by my accent, sometimes I just have some sort of a Northern Irish twang there, and Spanish and so on. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the session and that you find it useful. I think now that we have passed it as 5:03, I'm going to share my screen just to make sure that everyone can see me. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the question and answer tab that you have on your screen. Or, well, if you want to talk about any aspects or anything through the chat, I'm happy to check along and answer your questions. If we don't have time during the presentation, I will try my best at the end to catch up with your questions and comments if you have any. And you will have obviously my email address as well if you want to get in touch outside the language show. So just checking that I have my presentation ready. There we go. I hope you can see that clearly, that well. So, well, again, my name is Nazaret. I'm from Spain, but I work for Cardiff University at the moment. And today I wanted to bring to you some sort of a topic to reflect on how are we going to take the teaching of Spanish forward post-pandemic. Well, I think I was very excited when I prepared this presentation, and I actually in the title put post-pandemic, what now? I know we're still pretty much in the middle of it, but I think it's good to have an overview of what we've done in Cardiff University that has actually worked for us and that we plan to take forward in the future, and that hopefully you can also take some of these things on board for your own teaching practices. So what is it that we're going to be covering in this session today? We're going to explore the sort of changes that we had to incorporate when COVID happened. We had a bit of a nightmare. I think everyone can be sort of, or can relate to that sort of. But we had to sit down and reflect on, okay, so now COVID has happened, what now? What do we do now in terms of our teaching, learning and assessment provision? And in the second part, we're going to see, or we're going to reflect and review this new teaching strategy that we put in place due to COVID. And we're going to have a look at teachers and also the students' perspective. I think it's really important to have that integral, holistic sort of view. Then we're going to see what we would really like to take forward in terms of lessons that we've learned during this period of time that we've been making changes. So is it useful what we've put in place that we would like to implement and continue to use in the future? And then some final conclusions, some food for thought on things that we can reflect on and incorporate and implement in our teaching even after COVID-19. So COVID happened, and we were in a situation in which we had to rethink completely our teaching approach, but we had the challenge of having to sort of rethink everything, but keeping the academic standards and the same learning outcomes that we wanted our students to gain through our courses. So the approach we adopted was very similar to what other institutions within the UK adopted, which is a blended learning sort of approach to teaching. This blended learning approach was a mixture of online, synchronous and asynchronous activities combined with some face-to-face or in-person teaching activities on campus. So I'm just going to give you an overview of how we sort of divided, or we rethought the distribution of our teaching, taking into consideration the way we teach languages in Cardiff University, in particular one of the modules I coordinate, which is Spanish language year 2 module. So the way we teach these modules in Cardiff is by different components that are intertwined. So we have a grammar component, a translation element, and also a conversation component. And we decided, because of the restrictions in place, we had to keep the grammar element as a face-to-face activity because of the need to be wearing masks, and we had to keep distance, etc. So it was really hard for other elements to be taught face-to-face in this context. So we decided as an institution to keep grammar as the face-to-face element. We also worked on some asynchronous materials that we wanted the students to engage with. So grammar was partially taught asynchronously, and we also taught the translation component of the module completely asynchronously. Then conversation was labeled or designed as a synchronous activity in order to ensure that students could communicate without having to wear their masks or anything in the online environment. In order to ensure that students sort of knew how this new approach to teaching would work, we introduced what we call module maps. So module maps are a sort of document which explains everything that needs to be done on a weekly basis. I will go through it in a minute with you, so you know exactly what I mean by it. And then, apart from the teaching strategy that we had to rethink, we had to also rethink online assessment, or the move from invigilated exams to online assessments, as we didn't have an opportunity to have invigilated exams. So that was also another extra challenge that we had to overcome during the COVID situation. So as I said at the beginning, we had all these restrictions in place, but we had to preserve the learning outcomes, and we had to make sure that our students could learn in this sort of weird or odd academic context or climate. So we still had to bring our students to the standards. We had to, particularly in this language module, to bring them to a level comparable with the B2 of the European Framework of Reference for Languages. And we had another extra challenge added, which was the preparation for students to the year abroad. So in year 2, students in Cardiff University are preparing for their experience abroad, either for a semester or for the full year, depending on their degree program. And that was going to happen. So we could not really change anything in the learning outcomes because our students were going to go abroad in the following year. So we had to make sure they were equipped linguistically and culturally for this period of study. We want them, of course, as learning outcomes stated, to engage confidently in conversation, in everyday conversation in Spanish, to be able as well to expand viewpoints and discuss advantages and disadvantages of different topics relating to Spain and Latin America and culture and society. We want them to obviously to write coherent texts in a wide range of registers and wide topics, making use of appropriate grammatical and syntactical and lexical structures, extract and synthesize data from ideas, from written or audiovisual texts or visual texts. And the element of translation was also there, was present there. So translate passages from and into the English language, reflecting on their translation choices. So I'm going to explain a little bit how we divided our teaching, or how did we plan our teaching strategy. And I'm going to explain it by component, so you get an understanding of how we incorporated the changes that COVID sort of imposed on us. So as explained at the beginning, grammar was partly taught face-to-face, and also asynchronously. For the asynchronous work, we wanted the students to engage with pre-recorded videos covering different grammar points on a weekly basis. This proved particularly interesting when we had to incorporate, or deal with quite sort of challenging grammatical points. So when it's asynchronously, you want to make sure that your students understand and follow you and they are engaged. So some of the points that we took on board was trying to make them as visual as possible, incorporating GIFs, memes, pictures, making them as interactive as possible. But also by making them short and by having a proper structure so students could follow it properly. So the tools that we used for recording was mainly Zoom, but also Panopto, which is one of the tools that we can use through the university, and we can release and embed videos that we record via Zoom or other platforms through Panopto on our university platform. And Panopto has the advantage that you could integrate different quizzes throughout the length of the video. So you can actually check questions to the students while they're watching the pre-recorded videos to make sure they're following you. So you get the responses from the students and you can check what questions were a bit sort of difficult, or what of the questions were challenging and so on, so you could concentrate a bit more in the face-to-face sessions on those aspects that students were struggling with. Also, another key point was the use of stats. So we could see the students that were engaging with the materials, the average completion. So if they were watching the video in full, or if they were stopping in some parts, also to give us an idea of if they were engaging or if they were struggling at any point. And the platform that we use in Cardiff University to upload our materials is called Learning Central. And Learning Central also has an integrated option that it's called, online sort of tests. And we made use of this sort of tool to make sure students were also having a review on their progress, and for us to check their progress as well. And the advantages of these was that we could embed them in our platform through the Grade Center, so we could have an overview of what students were doing, if they were completing, what marks were they getting, difficulty in the exercises, and so on. They were not time limited, so that meant that they were not really under a massive pressure to complete them, so they could go back and check their notes and go back and complete their assignments. They could do the multiple attempts, so we could see whether there was progress there between the first attempt and the second and the third. And it was good as well because being forced to rethink our assessment and put it online, this platform gave us a sort of an idea of what the students were going to expect and see once they had to complete the summative, which are the end of the module tasks that we prepared for them. So this was sort of a formative activity that they undertook. So for the grammar face-to-face sessions, we always started with a sort of brief summary of rules, taking into consideration the input as well from the asynchronous materials, completely student-centered. So just asking really what they needed from us that wasn't clear, or even them just giving us, a summary of the main grammar rules. And in the context of course, of COVID-19, where students couldn't really do much group work, we had to make the most of our face-to-face sessions and integrate and involved all the students in the activities. So we incorporated a wide range of interactive apps and resources that I'm sure you are using in your own lectures and your own classes as well. But I would like to emphasize the use of these apps that really helped us sort of engaging students in this sort of environment that we were in. So we used Mentimeter and Kahoot, are quite similar. So anonymized answers from students, which make them really take part in the activities. Absolutely fabulous in terms of feedback, because the students can get prompt feedback and you can interact with them in a context, obviously, where you can really have much of a conversation because of the distance and so on. You can track results, so you can go back to what students have done in the class and spot any inaccuracies or any difficulties there. You can make it competition mode, so students can compete and they get that sort of rush, just trying to be the winners in the activities. And as well as that, you can make it a student pace. You can make these activities available to them outside class time. So if anyone obviously could not join for different reasons, they could undertake these exercises as well on their own time. Genuinely really good app to use as well in the classroom. I used it particularly to create escape room challenges, really interactive, really good resource to keep the class together in the times of COVID. Also, we use some other sources or apps such as Edpuzzle for short films, videos, and songs. Edpuzzle allows you to embed questions and interact with the students without having to have conversations all the time. At the time, it was obviously a bit of a challenge with masks and distance and everything. So it was a good resource to engage students in that environment. And lyrics training that you I'm sure are using, or you may be familiar with, just a music sort of platform that you can use with students to keep them engaged and to keep the good vibes and to see grammar applied in context, of course. So this is just a little sort of picture of how the activity of the escape room worked for us, or how I designed it. So really interactive, it really worked well. And students were able to sort of engage with, I think it was temporary clause sentences in Spanish, which can be a bit daunting with the use of the subjunctive, etc., in a very dynamic way. So they had like a little introduction on the mission they had to do, the suspects of this kidnap that happened in Cardiff, a map with different locations of places they could go and check. whether they could find the kidnapped girl, and then different missions that they had to complete, putting the grammar into practice. So really sort of interactive and interesting activity to bring to the class. So for the translation element, as I explained to you at the beginning, we had to sort of convert it into an asynchronous activity, and we made use of what we called translation discussion boards. So translation discussion boards was a sort of section integrated within Learning Central, our platform, very similar to Blackboard, exactly the same as Blackboard, if you are familiar with these sort of platforms. So Learning Central allowed us to create different translation discussion boards, and we grouped students in different tabs and different groups. So it was easier for us to be able to sort of divide them and monitor their progress, their interventions, etc. So the positivity of having a translation discussion board was that the tasks we created for them were clearly displayed in the platform. So students really had some structure and clarity on what was expected from them. And we could see all the steps being undertaken in the translation process. And of course, the way they were engaging with their groups, the way they were exchanging thoughts, the way they were discussing translation options, etc., was a really well sort of a structured and clear platform or tool to use for this asynchronous element. Also, the possibility of embedding YouTube videos, Panopto videos of us recording ourselves on particular tasks, interactive, the possibility of including interactive activities and links, images, etc., made the forum and the translation boards really attractive and appealing to students. And I think that also played a part on the asynchronous activity being a bit more engaging. So I'm going to explain a bit more in depth how we work with the translation boards, because it was completely asynchronous, and it could be, I don't know, a good sort of idea for some of you who may want to bring some more activities to your own teaching practices in this way. So the activities in translation discussion boards were structured normally with a video setting the guidelines and the explanations of the tasks that the students had to undertake. So they had everything there, clear and explained to them. We normally aim to set 2 to 3 tasks per week in order to prepare them for a sort of final task, which was the translation, the output. So tasks number 1 and number 2 were completed by a given date. We gave them a few days to complete that, and they were more related to listening comprehension, vocabulary activities. So they sort of knew what the translation was going to be about, and they were preparing themselves for that final task. And then task number 3, which was like sort of like the final task, or the reflective task, the translation and the reflective questions, was submitted by the end of the week. So we aimed to have all that reviewed, and we aim to give students feedback as promptly as possible before the next task was taking place. So that is sort of the structure that we followed for this asynchronous activities. Just to give you an idea as well of how we managed to involve students in assessment, which was a real challenge because our students were not online at the same time as us. So we were working in the same sort of forum, but at different times. So it was really difficult to engage students with assessment in this sort of environment. So we prepared an activity following the structure I explained to you. The activity was based on a topic that we thought students would engage with, which it was the translation of movie titles in Spanish. I don't know if you know this. If you're teaching Spanish or if you're familiar with Spanish language, of course you will. But I don't know why Spanish people, and sometimes, in some countries in Latin America as well, when it comes to translate movie titles, it gets a bit weird. Sometimes we do spoil the plot of the movie in the title, which does not have any relation whatsoever maybe with the original title. Anyway, so we thought this could be a good point to start engaging our students, and we give them two tasks. The first task was to watch a video on how translation of movie titles didn't work as planned for some Spanish movies, or some movies that were translated into Spanish. And we covered some of the tricky elements of learning, Spanish, and having that sort of combination, English and Spanish, like the use of false friends, register as well. And then the second task was, in this case, the translation task. So we asked them to translate the text, why do movie titles in Spain end up with such strange translations? But we sort of changed the structure this week to involve students a bit more, with assessment. So what we did was just to upload to the different forums a translation with errors. We told them that this translation, which was true, was it's a translation submitted by a student years ago, and we want them to be the teachers to take control of their own assessment and have a look at the marking criteria that we have in place to assess these assignments, identifying the errors in groups, analyze the errors, and give an overall mark among, taking into consideration the exchanges happening within the different groups. And it really worked well. And you would be surprised at how harsh sometimes the students can be compared to us. So this activity really, I think, helped being in this sort of environment with asynchronously to engage students with assessment. So the conversation element was, as I mentioned at the beginning, was taught synchronously. And because one of our main aims of this course is to take our students to the year abroad, to equip them linguistically and culturally for that, most of the topics for conversation were aimed to that. So we made use of more movies and TV series, just taking into account that students were at home most of the time and with access to different platforms such as Netflix, with a lot of content in the target language. So we incorporated activities that they could actually be a bit more involved in and just watch these series and movies in different platforms. We also wanted to put an emphasis as well on the differences of Spanish spoken in Spain and Latin American countries, because we sent students to different parts of the world, of the Spanish-speaking world. Also, we brought up some current affairs topics, like Erasmus, Brexit, feminism, inclusive language, obviously COVID-19, just to obviously have some sort of conversations on how we felt at the time, and short stories, particularly with a focus on Latin American authors. Some specific targeted activities for students to be prepared for the year abroad, such as studying in a Spanish-speaking country, CV writing, motivation letter conventions, looking for accommodation, opening bank accounts, and so on. So some of the resources we used that really worked being online was Quizlet for some preparation activities, for vocabulary and so on before the conversation sessions took place, and also Flipgrid that I'm sure most of you would be familiar with. Flipgrid was a really, really good way to get to know each other and introducing ourselves to the class, because they obviously were assigned to different groups for conversation, but they didn't really have many opportunities to meet as a course, as a group. So we gave them opportunities to use that as well to communicate with each other and to set tasks that allow them to sort of engage with the class. We had, as part of the assessment that I will explain later on how we structured it, we had activities through Flipgrid to prepare them for the examination, the oral examination that they hand at the end of the academic year. So we asked them to prepare a vlog that I will explain a bit more in depth later on. And with Flipgrid, we had the students exposed to that sort of like camera fear when they don't really want to be exposed and they want to record themselves. Well, I think everyone can relate to that feeling when you don't really want to record yourself or you really want to rewatch yourself. So we prepare them for that final exercise via Flipgrid as well. So just an activity that really worked for us was the Flipgrid activity called You Are Hired. So we were talking about employability and applying for different job opportunities for the year abroad, and we came up with this idea of just putting different job ads out there in Flipgrid, and students had to prepare their own sort of presentation and state why they wanted to apply for the job. And it was really interesting to see that students were actually commenting on each other videos as well, just very encouraging to keep everyone together, and some really brilliant presentations as well, really well prepared presentations to that they are prepared and using Flipgrid. So I mentioned at the beginning that we used modular maps. So modular maps are the documents that we use to sort of keep everyone on track, just to state what we were doing for the different elements, the different components. And students really liked the overview of knowing what to do, what to be done before the session, what was going to be done during the session. So as you can see there, it's structured in different columns. We sort of made like a summary of the activities that we were going to deal with given a particular week, then where to find or locate on our platform, an indicative type commitment so students know how to prepare for these tasks or what to expect in terms of time roughly, and then the relationship to assessment, so how every activity is linked to the final tasks that they had to submit for us. So then you have the grammar elements, the conversation and the translation, and then the sort of different modalities, online, face-to-face, pre-recorded elements, asynchronous discussion boards that I've been discussing before. It's all embedded in that document that was released to students, obviously in advance of the week, so they could have an overview and be fully prepared for the sessions. Okay, so I ended up the modular map document talking about the relation to assessment, and assessment was a really important part of the process of our plan of things that we had to rethink, and we had to rethink seriously. So obviously we didn't have an option for invigilated exams. So we had to convert all our assessments into sort of coursework. So students had access to resources and everything was done online. So the way we planned it, given the circumstances, was that students had to submit all the work via our platform, Learning Central. And for this Spanish language module that I'm discussing with you, we asked the students to present throughout the year at different times during semester 1 and semester 2, 3 pieces of work. So we wanted them to submit a translation into Spanish, a translation into English, and an essay in Spanish. However, we gave the students the flexibility of when they wanted to submit these pieces of work. So it is really flexible. It was really flexible for students because they could sort of assess themselves and just check, okay, now I feel prepared to submit my translations or my essay, depending on their progress. So that flexibility, that flexible approach was adopted as well, taking into consideration the special circumstances where we were in. So for the grammar and listening test, we also had a grammar and listening test activity that was submitted via Learning Central. It was time limited. And then the audiovisual assessment, which was a vlog. So the vlog was sort of like recording a video production that students had to prepare, and we gave them some indications of different topics that they could talk about. However, we were also welcoming different suggestions from students as well. The vlog took into consideration more the creative side of the students, obviously, because there was not an element of spontaneity, if you like. So we were considering other elements such as like the creativity, the way students sort of thought and planned the vlog, and it was a real success in the sense of bringing students' creativity out there. So this is how we planned, or we thought, our teaching and our assessment strategy for Spanish modules. But then at the end of the year, we obviously had to reflect and think about, okay, so what is it that we're going to take with us forward, or what is it that didn't really work, and we maybe need to rethink for the future. So I have collected feedback from both staff and students, and we've been receiving feedback from students through different channels. So during our regular staff and student panels, where students bring up different topics and maybe issues, and also things that they like about the modules. The module evaluation at the end of the academic year, and also surveys that we have been undertaking in class. So in general, I think you're not going to be very surprised about the comments and the sort of information that we got from this. So most students really struggle having some of the content online, engaging, but they were quite understanding, and they knew that this was in this way because of the restrictions we had in place. But some students didn't really feel that the grammar elements should have been made the face-to-face element, and they would have wanted to have some conversation classes face-to-face. But again, we sort of worked with that possibility, but it was not possible at the time due to the restrictions in place. But they highlighted that they missed that sort of contact. Also, some students really missed that sort of hour contact for translation, and they really had problems to engage with, or to find the motivation really to engage with the activities prepared. Some suggestions were made that if we were going to take the module forward next year, and we had some sort of online elements still in place due to the restrictions, maybe synchronous translation would be a better way to undertake this teaching. But we also had some really good comments, and it was actually very impressive to see that we got 100% satisfaction rate overall with the modules. And this was not the case in previous years, even pre-COVID. So it was really good to see that students really saw that the activities and all the thought that had been going through the teaching and the assessment had been done satisfactorily from their perspective. So they really liked the clarity, through the use of module maps and where to locate the information. They really enjoyed as well the asynchronous work for grammar that they had to do, the engagement with the videos. I am going to speak about myself, and in this case, but I've always tried to make sure everyone is following me in class, everyone is there and understands. For me, pre-recording videos was a bit of a challenge because I didn't have the students in the classroom. I didn't know whether they were following me or not, but I was gladly surprised to see that they were really engaging with them and really valued them. Some comments we had about conversation being online was great. So we saw some students didn't really like the approach to online conversation classes, but some other students really enjoyed the fact that they were going to be put into different rooms with different students. They could share thoughts and discussions. In terms of the translation activities I was explaining to you just before, it was quite nice and positive to see that nearly 93% of the students found these activities to be of help when developing, their language skills. And another thing that was highlighted by the students as well was the fact that they had that flexibility of choice in assessment. So they could submit different pieces of work, even in set dates, but they could choose what pieces of work they wanted to submit and when. So from the perspective of a staff, what we have to see, if you've been working in this environment, I'm sure you can relate to this, that attendance was an issue, the disengagement from some students that struggle with the online environment. For instance, some people loved breakout rooms because they could see each other in the class and talk in small groups. Some people really hated it. They were not really prepared for that. Some cameras off, so some people not turning on their cameras, etc. So it was a bit of a struggle there. The engagement with the translation discussion boards was really good for those who really engaged with the activities. I think they really made the most of them, but we could also see some people who really lacked that sort of motivation to go through the activities asynchronously. In terms of online assessment and not having invigilated exams was, of course, a bit concerning. We didn't know how it was going to work, particularly with the oral task being a vlog and not having that sort of interaction with the students. But I'm just going to tell you the positives. We, in terms of online assessment, we found that in terms of results that students got, were in the same sort of similar range from previous cohorts. The online setting for tests and submission of work worked really well, because students could get prompt feedback when it comes to submission of tests, but also when they were going to submit essays or translations, the fact of having everything electronically displayed was easier for students and for lecturers to review and work with the feedback as well. We know that the flexibility for students in terms of assessment work well for us as well in terms of workload, because spreading the tasks and giving students choices meant that we didn't have a bunch of maybe 100 translations in one go, but we could sort of split the marking among the members of the teaching team. And the sort of having some asynchronous activities gave staff as well some sort of flexibility, so we didn't have to be online at the same time as the students. We could go through their work at different times, and I think some colleagues really found that useful when having family commitments as well and other circumstances around at the time. So lessons learned, what do we want to take moving forward? So some of these things we've incorporated already into this academic year, and we would love to see this also in the future. We're going to carry on using the use of module maps, because it gives a lot of a structure, not only to students, but also to us, to know exactly what we want to make out of the teaching time and the preparation that students have to make beforehand. We are aiming to have, of course, some increase of face-to-face teaching. We don't have all the elements face-to-face at the moment. We have teaching of conversation classes face-to-face and grammar face-to-face, but translation is taught synchronously this year, but we're aiming to have everything face to face in the second semester. We are going to keep, and we're keeping this year as well, pre-recorded videos for students to engage with, not only just before the lessons, but also before any sort of exams or preparation. Students go back to them, review them, etc. So online tests and extra resources, it really took time to prepare all these set learning central tests and extra resources for students. But then the good thing is that you can sort of reuse them and change them slightly and add more resources every year. So you have a really good bank of resources for students to be using in their course. So as I said at the beginning, we have to restructure a little bit the approach to the translation activities, and we approach translation this academic year as a synchronous element, but keeping the structure and the resources we built up for the asynchronous work. In terms of online assessment, the assessment choices, as I said, worked really well. The submission of coursework worked well as well, instead of having invigilated exams. However, we had to undertake a revision of our marking criteria and put more of an emphasis on the content and the use of resources that the student are utilizing to produce a piece of work, and also for translation, so sort of reflective questions to ensure that students are informing their translation choices with the right tools, and they know how to justify the translation choices and reflect on the translation process. So just to wrap up, just a few notes there, that obviously the arrival of COVID was abrupt and left us absolutely puzzled and exhausted. We didn't really know what to do or how to face the situation. But the truth is that it gave us opportunities to rethink and improve the teaching of our current modules, and came out a bit of our comfort zone. Just check what apps and resources are out there that we can incorporate and use wisely in our lectures and our sessions and our seminars. Now is just coming down to a point that there's so much out there, so many resources and so many apps. It's just coming down to the ones that we really know work, that we want students to get involved with. In terms of online assessment, obviously, although with limitations, as I explained to you with the vlog, for instance, for oral assessments, can be a new opportunity to explore assessment and open new doors, and in the way we assess students. We aimed moving forward to also keep some flexibility as much as we can, and involve your students in the process, or involve my students in the process, for instance, with assessment choices, if you have the possibility. And I think it really proved after and during and after the pandemic, or well, we're still going through it, but after the first sort of year where we had far harder restrictions in place, that students can be really engaged and work very well independently if given some well-structured and guided activities to work with. And I think that's everything I wanted to tell you in this session today. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found it interesting, insightful, and if you have any questions or anything that you would like to comment on, I am very welcome to respond to them. I'm aware of time. I know I've been running over a little bit. I just get very excited about the topic. So let me see if I can stop sharing and going through the questions. Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I can see a lot of Spanish people as well. Great. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation, and you have my email address at the beginning as well. So if you want to get in touch, or if you want to discuss anything in detail, just let me know, and I will be excited. I'm very willing to discuss anything with you. So thank you very much for spending this Friday evening with me, and have a lovely weekend, everyone. Okay. Yes, if you want the presentation, yes, of course, just email me and we can make sure that the information gets to you via email. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Adios.